Welcome to the Employee to Entrepreneur channel. Please subscribe so every week you get to hear from amazing guests that share their stories and inspiration and motivation to help them in their journey, and hopefully it will inspire you as well in your transition from employee to entrepreneur. Welcome, welcome, welcome to this episode. I am beyond excited about our next speaker. She is from the world of Disney. How many of us don't love Disney World or have that on our bucket list to go and see? Forget the fact that you have to have kids or don't have kids. We all want that. And this amazing lady transitioned from employee to entrepreneur, living her life in the Disney world and then coming out and living her now Disney life. So I am so excited. I'm going to read a little bit of who she is so that you can understand her background. And then we're just going to go into this lovely conversation where she's going to give us some of her history and some amazing nuggets in her transition from employee to entrepreneur. We're just going to call her Chef Katrina because that's really what we need to call her because that's who she is. She's the CEO and founder of Create Her Business Rewire, the proven female business model for high achieving women who desire to create a multi-million-dollar business in harmony with self, family, wealth, and philanthropy. I just love all that. Katrina, a former chef at Walt Disney World, is now celebrated for her innovative design of business education for women. Having coached, mentored, and trained thousands of entrepreneurs, the one thing she saw over and over again was the burnout and struggle female entrepreneurs dealt with. Why was this proven training failing women in business? What was missing for women? These questions ignited a fire in Katrina and down a path to understanding how women and men differ in physiology, hormonally, emotionally, when it comes to birthing, nurturing, and scaling a business to revenue of million plus. This is just so important because we are different. Men and women are different, even in the transition from employee to entrepreneur. I know you've created the first ever female energetic business planner to empower business women to track energetic flow and success because women are on different hormonal cycles. So for the men watching it, I'm sure you've realized that with all the women in your life, and providing a new level of awareness for women to tap into unique energetic flow and unprecedented productivity and slowing down when we need to do more. Chef Katrina, thank you so much for being here with our audience because I know that the journey and the decision to transition from being this great employee, especially if it's a career you love. I'm the first to say, if you love your job, then there's no requirement to become an entrepreneur. But for those of us that, even if we loved our job and burnt out or decided we wanted to do something different and now transition to entrepreneurship, it takes so much bravery and courage. So I'm going to throw it over to you to just share a little bit of your background and that pivotal moment that when you went, I got to do something different.
Yeah, I'm just an honor to be here with you and on this amazing podcast that you've created and really around this transition because it is a transition and it's not an easy one. I can tell you that. Having been through it myself, it took me a good couple of years to transition from the employee mindset into the business mindset because it is a different space to be in. So, yes, my background is I went through culinary school. I did all the training. I did all the internships in culinary. I got the honor to do an internship at Disney was my first start. And then from there, they hired me on. So I went from an hourly all the way up through management. Yes, the title chef is actually the title. And I ran a kitchen, I ran a multi-million-dollar kitchen. We put food out to thousands of people every single day. And it was amazing. Really enjoyed my time there. But I also started to see something for myself as I looked around me and as I was getting up into these management roles. A lot of my peers were really into cooking. And I found myself not so much into cooking. And what I mean by that is like they would have the cuisine magazines. They would be wanting to learn the new techniques. There would be always this like education around them. And really what I was collecting back home was business education books. I started reading my first book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, was like my introduction. And then from there, I just kept wanting to learn more and more about business. And I was fascinated by the world of entrepreneurship. What did that actually look like? And how do you transition? Isn't it the same thing? You're in a corporate environment. Aren't you looking at a business? And the reality is, no, you're an employee getting paid for the service you do. And yet for entrepreneurship, you are the business. And it's a different mindset because they don't teach you that in school. We hear that all the time. What they teach you in school and what I got educated around was how to be a good employee, really good employee. And then when you get into the world of entrepreneurship, you are everything. Like you get to make decisions independently. And I thought it was fantastic. So my journey was I went from full time to part time to no time, and which is very unheard of in the world of Disney. There are very few part time chefs. I was one of three on the entire property. Now imagine there's 62,000 plus employees. And of that, there are chefs, and of that, there's only three that are part time. So in that time period, I took my part time and I started looking at the world of entrepreneurship. That had a little more balance than the traditional of somebody going from a full 45-hour type of job to transitioning. I kind of had the balance of I'm getting paid for going in and still being an employee as I'm learning what it looks like to be my own business owner. So it's been a journey to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pick up on something that you talked about. As I said, I'm a big believer that if you do love your career and your job and being an employee, amazing. And you brought up a really important point. Your peers really did love it because they were doing everything to support that. And so if you find, for those of you listening that, are wanting to do that transition or wondering if it's the right thing, I think one of the biggest nuggets that I just heard right now was around if you've got a side hobby that lights you up more than what you're doing, that you're actually getting to know a different industry resource, you're reading different books, your hobbies are causing that passion, which allows you to go to do the job that you need to do just so you can do your hobby. That's probably a good way of starting to think about, am I really in the right space? Life's way too short
Oh yeah.
to do things we don't want to do and don't enjoy doing and don't fuel us. So I love that little nugget because sometimes I feel that people get a little stuck going, am I really making the right decision? How do I know that I am? Just look at your life. What
Yeah.
are you reading? What are you paying attention to? What makes you excited? What do you do in your off time? And can you monetize that? So let's talk about that because you obviously started to go part-time. Did you know what entrepreneurial venture you wanted to do?
Oh
Were you
God,
like
no.
really clear? Because would you want to open your own like a restaurant? You are a chef.
I don't ever recommend being a part-time employee and trying to open up your own restaurant. That was unfortunately doomed to fail, not knowing that at the time. But when I was part-time, I actually purchased a restaurant and I opened it up and had it running my business partner and I. It ran from January to October. So for 9 glorious months, we were in the world of a restaurateur and we ran a wing and sandwich restaurant. It was really a great learning experience. And I think that's really where I got to look at what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? Because you are in control of everything, the money, the inventory, the employees, the quality of service, the customer service, and it's all encompassing. And when you work as an employee, you're only seeing a segment of that. You're typically serving one part of that customer journey. And as the entrepreneur, you have to look at the bigger picture of what's the entire journey that not only you provide as a company, but what is your customer experiencing. So that restaurant, everyone says that's a failure. I said, no, I learned so many lessons inside of that. And I said to myself at the end of that, when I was sitting down with my business partner, and I said, what do you want to do from here? We can continue going and see if we can get out of this financial hole, or we can just let this go and just say, hey, we've made a financial misstep. It's okay. We'll recover from this and move forward. So we both chose to move forward and to let the restaurant go. And in that decision, I really became aware of that this is not uncommon. This is more common than not with most people that start any business. Is getting started is the hardest place because you are everything to everybody. So, how do you still enter in the world of business ownership? How do you understand the world of business entrepreneurship? Because there are different steps in this journey. So, when you first go from entrepreneur into having your business, you're still technically the employee of your business.
Right.
You're getting paid as an employee because you have the idea, you're getting started and you're building it. So, there's a lot of work you're doing inside the beginning. So it's going to feel like you're working really hard for very little pay, doing a lot of different things. Okay. But ideally, if you take that back into the corporate world, look at how you stair step in management. You're the employee, and then your mid management, and then your upper management, and then your C-suite management. You want to look at that as you grow your business. The first thing you're going to be in is in the trenches, and
Hmm.
then you move up. And that's a lot of self-development. I think that's the biggest piece when you go from employee into the world of business ownership and then into the world of entrepreneurship. It is the transition of knowing yourself and then recognizing that you can't do it all on your own. You're going to need the team. And that is one of the hardest things, especially as women, is surrendering our baby to someone else that doesn't do it as good as we can do it. Or that's the belief system. But that's also been one of the biggest lies that I can share with you also, that you can't do it all and it's not your best when you try to do everything. That was a big piece for me, is that when I looked at everything I was doing and I closed that business, I recognized how much more of an entrepreneur I wanted to be, how much more I wanted to serve and really help other businesses, taking in a lot of what I had learned from Disney. How do you onboard people? How do you take care of your customers? And I started looking at stepping back and looking at what did I experience, and then how can I bring those experiences into the world of online marketing and into the world of online community? And it was a really interesting journey for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. For those people who have been to Disney, and I've been to Disney a few times, the customer experience is really everything for Disney. Just making it seem home and you're loved the moment you walk in. So, what an amazing opportunity for you to firsthand. But I think for any of us, when we go to a great restaurant or we go to a great place where we feel so loved, what a great learning point to go. If I felt this way, how do I make someone else feel that way as they enter into my world? Like, and I think that's one of the things I'm a big believer in being an employee before you being an entrepreneur. And I know a lot of people are, I'm going to be an entrepreneur since I was like 18 years old. And obviously, not my story, not yours. And pretty much anybody that I'm interviewing in this podcast are not people who have been entrepreneurs since they were 18. It's really that transitional journey. But one of the reasons I think is so amazing is you get to decide what kind of employee experiences you, that when you become an entrepreneur, you end up doing it very differently than you would have otherwise.
Oh, yes. I think that's a huge customer service, I think, is a mandatory for every entrepreneur or business owner. I really think getting in there and having the experience of having to serve someone else.
Right.
And I think when you just go in and you're just the entrepreneur and you don't have the customer experience, or you're not self-aware enough to see how that impacts you and everything you're dealing with, you're missing a critical element in your business and a financially abundant element, because those customers, they Disney keeps having customers coming back. They're talking not just once. Some of them come year after year and they're spending anywhere between, like at the time when we were talking about it, was like $5,000 for a weekend. But now I'm not sure, it's like up to 8,000, 10,000 for a weekend at Disney. And they'll come back and do it over and over again. What does Disney do? And how do they train their employees? And what is the culture they're creating? It does all come down to culture
Correct.
that they're creating that brings these people back, these families back over and over again. And that's really the heart of any business, is that you really want to look at who are you serving and then how do you continue to serve them?
Yeah. And what would you say that one of your biggest learnings when you opened your restaurant? Because I'm still really curious about that brick and mortar. A lot of people, when they think of entrepreneurship or business, they think of a brick and mortar. And of course, now we know that there's a lot of other ways of being an entrepreneur or being a business owner. And I don't mean all the things we necessarily see on social media where people are like, I live on a beach and I make $1 million a year on sitting on a beach. I'm talking about the idea that I was an employee. I have to open a brick and mortar. And then suddenly my next step is, oh, I'm just going to be some online presence that lives on a beach and makes $1 million a year. So let's divide that up a little bit because you have some of that experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Remember we talked about self-development? So that restaurant came into fruition because I was hosting the Rich Dad Poor Dad's game Cash Flow. So
Love
I was sitting at Denny's because I wasn't meeting anybody where I worked that wanted to learn how to build wealth. Like they were all employee mindset. So I'm sitting here playing cash flow like once a week with this group of people. And that is where I was introduced to the idea of the restaurant. And that's where I found my business partner. So that was us getting in there together. And I think when you look at opening a physical location, find a partner to go in with because doing it on your own puts a lot of responsibility. And especially for women, we already have a lot on our plate. You want the balance. I was kitchen and my business partner, Juan, was front of the house. We had two sections of the business.
Nice.
And each one of us ran that, but still talked to each other to make sure the whole thing was working.
Right.
I think when you get into a brick and mortar, you've got different things to consider. You've got a lease that you've got to look at. You've got to look at what is it that, how do you get your utilities turned on? That was a big learning curve. Did you know your insurance company can actually front the money for your 3 months of electrical or water that you need to get started? I did not know that. But instead of having to shell out $7,000 to $10,000 in the handoff of this restaurant, I got to use my insurance and they underwrite it. And I was only paying $47 or something. It was pretty minimal, maybe $100, something like that. Don't quote me. I can't remember. It was a while ago.
Yeah, different places, but
yeah. But the thing is, that's where I learned that there's creative financing at play. And there's ways to make your dreams become a reality without having it all come out of your own pocket. A lot of the times what we learn is that we have to front everything ourselves in order to get our business going. And what I learned with the brick and mortar is that I didn't have to front the cash to get it going. I could actually use other resources that would front the investment and just pay a minimal amount to have it written.
Wow.
So that was an interesting element behind the brick and mortar, was that I learned a lot about things you wouldn't typically know if you go to a restaurant, like how to get your liquor license, how to get your insurance in case something should happen on your premise.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little details in the brick and mortar that when you come into the digital space, you never experience. You'll never have an insurance policy that, covers your overall establishment in case it burns down, in case the customer has an accident. Like those things aren't in your world because they don't trip over anything in the digital space. It was a great experience because there's a lot of things that I can now bring to my clients around how businesses get built. And it opened my mind up to say, okay, what are other possibilities for how we can start a business and what it might look like for us? That was the big thing about going from employee to owning the brick and mortar, is that there's definitely more legal responsibilities, I guess you could say, that we typically don't have when I switched into the digital marketing space.
And again, it's whatever your passion is. Like we started off this conversation, what do you find yourself being the most passionate about? What is it that lights your fire? We're so grateful that people love to own restaurants, obviously, and have brick and mortar places that we can go to and stores and storefronts. So if that's your passion, that's great. But agreed, there are a lot of things to learn and know and make sure. And probably the biggest thing is just ask questions, right?
Yes.
Don't make assumptions of what we think entrepreneurship looks like because we've been an employee. And most of us who are employees often have worked in bigger companies. And so they've been established for 5, 10, 20, 100 years, whatever it might be. And we've just walked into it in our little box. Yeah. And now we come out going, that's exactly what I need. And that's not necessarily true. So those were really great points. Let's switch gears a little bit. I want to go back to your books. I'm an avid reader. I love personal development. I love reading books and podcasts and all the rest of it. What would you say are your top 3 books that influenced you the most and why?
Oh, you're going to love this answer because I actually, if you'd asked me that probably 2 years ago, my answer would be vastly different than it is today. And so, because I've actually, you can't see it, but I actually have a whole stack of all my business books because I just took a picture on this next to me. And so, if I were to look down at it, I think one of the biggest impacts, the first book that had the biggest impact would have been The 1 Minute Millionaire. There's a book called The 1 Minute Millionaire, and it talks about business on the left side of the book. So it's all analytical. And then on the right side of the book is the story. This book is really interesting when it talks about how to become a 1 minute millionaire. Like you can choose to be a millionaire every minute. And then it's what are the actions you're taking. I think that was one of the most profound books. I think I've read that one more than not, and I quote a lot out of that book because it spoke to both my masculine energy and my feminine energy.
Excellent.
So, in that, I think it balanced me more when I was looking at what kind of business books I was reading. And then, if you're asking my other two books, I just happen to have them here next to me. The other book that really became like an aha moment for me was a book called Pussy, the Reclamation. And so this was my first female, I actually call this a female business book. Now, you may not believe me when you start reading it, but there's so much genius in there about what it is to be a female and what we experience in the world, as opposed to what we've been gifted by the men around our world. So this was a great one telling me like I create my emotions. They're not something the guy creates for me. Like I'm having the reaction, he's not. And so it was really a fantastic book. And I think the other biggest impact in how I've designed business moving forward is a book called In the Flow by
Mm,
Elisa Betty. I
okay.
hope I'm saying your last name right. It's a 28-day plan working with your monthly cycle to do more, stress less. And it was the first book that explained to me why I was burning out in the world of business and what I could do differently and starting to become more centered around myself. That changed a lot in how I approached business because I did struggle a lot in transitioning. Employee, I had burnout. Entrepreneur, it was like every level of burnout. It was emotionally, mentally, physically, everything. I did experience some of that as an employee, what experiencing as an entrepreneur, and then trying to keep that business running. As an employee, you can leave a job.
Yes.
You can leave, you can go find another job, you can reset yourself. As the business owner, the business is still going. So having burnout while you're trying to keep those wheels turning is not always the best place for women to be. Going through that and reading that opened up a whole new way for me to now start like looking at not only my business but my life. That was a big transition for me around those three books. I would say, if anything, those are the three books I recommend moving forward to every woman that gets into business because while the business education we have access to is fantastic, it's not set within the energetic cycle of being a woman. If you can read those and then read these books and everything else that's on the shelf written by men, you'll have a different perspective of what you're reading. And I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I want to deep dive a little bit more because we've talked a few times. I've seen your presentations and the work you do. But for the men on the line here listening to this, one of the reasons why it's so important to hear what, Katrina is talking about is that men and women do work on different cycles. And if you are ever working with a partnership with another woman, whether it be a relationship partner or a business partner, or even if you have clients that are women that you work with because the world now is so integrated where we have people and people who work exclusively with women or exclusively with men. It is very rare that ever happens where you never interact with somebody of the opposite sex. It's just not going to happen in our world.
Right.
Understanding this is so important because it's so true that most women, unfortunately, in this day and age, it's still very true that the bulk of the household responsibilities tend to still fall on the woman between children, parental care, household, and
And it's finances.
I'm not saying there are not a lot of men that pick up the slack. I'm just saying that the bulk of it still falls on the woman. And so burnout for women and your partners and your business partners is real. Katrina, talk a little bit about, very briefly, the little bit of the differences, but I'd love to go in a little bit more around A, why we should forgive ourselves and give ourselves grace, and B, how does a woman communicate with that to a man, and how a man who is watching this can then interact better with the women around them.
I love this question. So I'm going to answer your first one. A, how do you give yourself grace? Women, honestly, the need to rest is critical for us. The need to step away and to ask. One of the biggest things I'm coming across with women is you're asking and communicating that you need this downtime. Men naturally reset at night while they sleep. They're decompressing already. They're ready to close out their day. Women, because of how we energetically cycle, we need to be in communication. It is one of the biggest things that even I struggled with. I still struggle with today. I'm by no means perfect on this, but there'll be times that I'm like, I just need a nap. I just need a day off.
Yeah.
Business isn't going to collapse around me. The kids aren't. You've got to create the space and the boundary to really be authentically you. And women, we need to be open to requesting that time. I think that's the first thing for self-awareness. And I think that's one of the hardest things is that because of every information that we've been given, it's so geared around men, we don't even recognize what our own bodies are telling us. And so getting back in tune with your body is probably the hardest thing I see women deal with. But that awareness will light you up. How do you interact this within your relationship? Men want you to be strong. They want you to be in your feminine. They want you to be somebody that's softer, not necessarily the one holding down the shift for everything. It's asking to pass those reins. An alpha female is somebody that's able to communicate her wants, needs, and desires effectively. So an alpha female isn't standing alone. She's asking her community for support, whether it's your girlfriends, whether it's your family, whether it's your business community. This is where getting out and asking for that support makes the biggest difference. Getting in tune with your energetic cycle and what that looks like for you and at the season of the life you're in is critical. For the men, support us. Start noticing those little details about when our energy is high and when our energy is low. And I know in the world of being feminist, we're not supposed to have you open the door for us. You're not supposed to make decisions. But I can't
It's more
tell
like
you
that.
how many women I've met that we are tired of making decisions for dinner. When we say plan something for us, please, dear God, don't make me think. Like, I am tired of thinking. If I say take us on a date, I want you to find the restaurant. I don't care. Don't ask me if I like it or not. By now, you should know. If
Yeah.
you need to take me out to see a movie, stop guessing what I want and create moments for me. Take the burden of all the decisions off my plate. And I know that seems anti women or feminist, but the thing is that we are in decision fatigue. As women, we make more decisions. Okay, let me ask you this for all my women that are watching. How many of you get up in the morning, look in the mirror, and make how many decisions about your appearance? There's a wrinkle here. There's my hair here. I got to put this clothes on. I got to put this makeup on. You've made so many decisions, and especially if you have kids, you've made even more decisions. A guy woke up out of bed and said, I'm up. He throws on his clothes and his thought is out loud to work. But you've made 1,000 decisions already about your day. For the men out there, my request for you to support women is really be there to support them. Women are nature, we're chaos in action. Embrace that chaos of who we are, but we're also in desire and need of father time. And father time puts structure around what we're doing, but also hold time for us. I need you to hold time for women. Give them the space to be themselves, but also honor them and who they are. That's different from you. Those are my two quick, and I hope that was quick enough, but that's really what I see in that conversation.
Yeah, that's so great. And I think a lot of times as women, we feel judged. And so if there's one thing I can say, I love your definitely as a woman, speak up and ask that we get so embarrassed because I think we feel like we're going to get judged by it. That's probably the one thing is that be surrounded by people that don't judge you for taking a break, for just saying, I can't today, I can't tonight, or I'm not making that phone call, or I'm not going to that meeting. And it's completely okay to do that. And we don't do it enough. It's great. And you're right. Our business is not going to just collapse because we decide to take a nap one day or not go to that one meeting. Just trust that your body needs you to listen to it more than you need to go out and push yourself because then you're no good to anybody.
Yeah.
If you can describe it a little bit about, for the most part, men live in a 24-hour cycle a day. Women work in a 28 to 30-day cycle. You've taught a lot about it. If you want to learn more about it, obviously go to Katrina's book and her website and meet with her and look her up if this is something that really piques your interest, which it should, and learn more about it. But if you can give a little bit of a summary of what that looks like and why it's important as you're transitioning to entrepreneurship to actually even be aware and know this.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm so glad you asked it because transitioning from employee to entrepreneur, you're going to be in productivity mode. You're absolutely going to want to get into just doing something every single day. And typically, the first information you're going to get is you need to be doing something consistently. You're going to hear this a lot, especially transitioning into the world of business ownership, is you need to be consistent. You need to be doing something all the time. And this is the structure men have designed and developed for business success. Yet, what we don't know is that men typically hormonally transition in 24 hours. They wake up in the morning, they're at peak performance, they're getting done, they're having a great, but that is why we have things like the 5 a.m. miracle mornings and things like that, is because it's built around how they wake up and where they're at hormonally. In the afternoons, their testosterone wanes, they actually feel more social. This is why happy hour exists. This is why they do social hour. This is where guys go golfing and do things like this. This is their fun time. In the evening, have you ever noticed the guy just goes, I'm done. I just need to sit back and relax the thing. He's decompressing. He's done for the day. Next day, he starts all over again, high energy. Like he just does that. The business world you're about to enter into is built around that structure.
Yeah.
Okay. It works. It absolutely works. You can actually run full force as a female and do this, but I tell you right now, you're going to hit a wall. I have yet to meet a woman that doesn't hit a wall trying to do this, okay? Or cry, trying to figure out how to balance it all. Ladies, for you, you actually work inside an infradian rhythm. It does mean that we work inside of dual clocks. We do work in a dual clock. We work inside the circadian rhythm to get things done, but our energy level is actually an infradian rhythm. Hormonally, we're different. We actually energetically cycle over 28 to 30 days.
Which
And
all
it
women know
differs
this.
for us.
We know this from the age of 12, 13,
Yeah,
14 years
so
of age.
most of us call this our menstrual cycle, but it's not just the bleed that actually we experience in the infradian rhythm. There's a lot of mental and psychological things that are happening. We're actually higher in estrogen levels, so our hormonal levels are up. Our creative thinking actually improves. It's crazy. We have 7 to 10 days where we're geniuses. Women are a genius. You could ask us anything and we'll know it. And you know how they always say a woman never forgets? If you ask us during that time phase, we'll pull stuff back 30 years ago because our memory level is so concentrated because we're getting up and gearing up for our next season of life. And so inside of that, we have this high memory, high cognitive thinking, great time to be strategizing for your business, for your life, for your family, for your health. Then you get in communication. Communication is key. That's when you feel your most authentic. You are very clear in your messaging. This is a great time to have an argument with your husband, by the way, because you'll definitely be right. Use that to your advantage, okay? Then in that third stage of your energy cycle, your productivity. Because what happens here is that you're looking at the fine details. You're looking to complete loose ends. Like you can't handle all these loose ends, which is why we tell women pick one thing at a time every month to focus on, because then you get closure and completion. When you're trying to spin all those plates, you don't get to close any of those plates. You don't get to to finish a project. Figure out what project you want each month. And when you close that, you're going to have a longer life, like longevity of your business. You're going to feel better about your business and you're going to have that like legacy look. You're already looking towards the future. The fourth phase of energetically for women is rest and reset. This actually lasts anywhere between 3 to 7 days. Take the week off. Take the day off. Go take a nap. This is where I say get in communication with whoever you're working with your team and just say, I'm going dark for the day. And go do something you enjoy. Go paint, go skate, go play outside, go do whatever it is, but reset your energy level. And that's the biggest thing I can tell you about going from an employee is you're built inside the circadian rhythm. As a woman in entrepreneurship and business ownership, you get to choose how your business now looks, what hours you are open. That's the difference.
Okay, that's amazing. So I'm going to ask you two questions and they might be interchanged. So feel free to ask. So the question I want to ask you is, what part of the work that you do is often misunderstood by people? And I'm going to ask you a second question to see if they're related to it, because I feel like it can be. If a man works in a 24-hour cycle and a woman works, let's say 28 days, 28-day cycle, if a man is doing this every single day, isn't he going to achieve things so much faster than us as women who are only doing it every 28 days? Is his business not going to be so much better? And if I follow that pattern, my business will go faster and better than if I do a month, because a day versus a month means I'm not nearly as productive. I'm not going to get it. My business will not flourish. So maybe that relates back to the what is most misunderstood about the work you do.
That is the misunderstood piece. What it's interesting is when you talk about those energetic phases, there's the genius level. Doesn't mean you're not being productive, but your productivity isn't going to be in the details. It might be just more in the design of the business. The men, because they do that, they still have burnout. They have actually faster burnout, but that's where the balance of the female, if you've ever met a very successful guy, typically always says behind every great man is a fabulous woman. There's a reason that actually exists, is because she's balancing him. She gets him to slow down. She gets him to take a break from it all. She says, how much money is enough money do you make before we go on vacation? How much is enough? She slows him down. Otherwise, he's this perpetual being that never stops. And
Mhm.
he is going to burn out also. So, yes, there's this trajectory, which is why I say when we get into business as women, there is that initial, I got to get up and going. But there comes a point where you've got to look at, can I maintain this? Guys cannot maintain that level. They still need that break. And that's where the balance of working with a male and female partner is the women is typically going to say, it's time to quit. We're done for the day. But instinctually knowing that as a woman, you're going to look at, okay, I've got productivity because I'm taking care of my kids. I'm doing this. So you have a lot more on your plate that you're contending with. So it's misunderstood because we think that women are only working in 24-hour cycles. Here's the thing though. If you look at any business plan, it's built around what? How many days till they say something becomes a habit?
21 days normally.
21 days. But in the business world, how many they break it into 90-day cycles. So they break it into quarters. So they say you start something in this quarter or this month, you're going to test it in the next month, and you're going to evaluate it in the third month. And then you're going to see if you're going to take that into the next quarter.
Right.
Guess what women do naturally?
That.
So while the guys are in perpetual motion, women are actually cycling through those moments automatically every single month. So the misunderstanding is that we're not as productive when we follow our energetic phase. The reality is that in our productivity phase, those 7 to 14 or 10 to 14 days, we are more productive than a man can be in those 4 to 6 hours. He has 4 to 6 hours in the morning where he's the most productive. We have 10 to 14 days where we have the entire day to really get into productivity. So the misbelief is that his short period of time productivity is going to outperform our longer period of time of productivity. He needs to reset every night. We need to reset for 3 days.
Correct.
He needs to sleep inside of that, but we'll have a different experience of time. So yeah, I think when you talk about what's the difference, it's in within the day, we're doing things, but what are we focused on that's moving us forward? And it can't be everything. And even guys say, I need one project, and they bring one project to fruition over a month. Women do the same thing, except for we'll get more done and already be building the next part of the phase before it completes.
Yeah, this is so great because so much of what I talk about is the up and down nature of entrepreneurship. The, oh my God, this is a great idea. That, oh my gosh, I'm going to go bankrupt. And oh my gosh, that person called me back and I closed the sale. And this was the dumbest thing I've ever decided to do in my life. And if we are understanding how our cycle works, we are going to feel the wanes of it almost more so at certain times. So when you're really productive, that roller coaster is going to feel very baby-like. Whereas when you're in rest and you're giving yourself that rest, you might feel it even more saying, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything. This was a bad idea. I
Oh God,
shouldn't
yeah.
do it. And you're in the slumps of that roller coaster entrepreneurship ride that we take. And so understanding, and for me, I've always been a big believer that if you understand something, then you know how to tackle it. Part of our issue is that when we don't know why it's happening the way it is, then you feel like you're the only one that it's happening to and you beat yourself up. and versus now understanding that this rhythm is natural and it's normal and it's good. And the powerhouse of being surrounded by laws of association of people, particularly if you're a woman, find a group of women. Join my program, join Katrina's program, join a program where you're surrounded by other women who appreciate and understand this and will give you that slack because we're going to be at cycles at different times in that
Yep.
28 days. But when we do have it happen, we're cheerleading each other on to say, yes, take a break. You
Yeah,
need.
you're emotional. Oh my gosh, you're highly emotional. By all means, be emotional today. You want to cry it out, go cry it out. Like, it's understand that's okay. And it's not a bad thing. And when you start feeling your emotions, they're actually triggers for what you should be focused on. And so many times we talk about business being non-emotional. Take the emotion out of the business. Unfortunately, ladies, we're emotional creatures. So taking the emotion out of the business puts us into burnout faster because we're not listening to the emotions of what our bodies tell. Our intuition is fantastic, ladies. We read body language for all my moms out there. How many of you guys know babies cry? One's hungry, one's poopy diaper, one's I need something. You don't even need the words or the facial expressions. You just know by the tonality. That intuitiveness is something we need you to bring into the business world. That's what makes us connected. And business is a connection of people. And the more connected you are to people and the more you serve people, man, it's the magic. But you've got to understand how to make sure your cup is full so that you can be of service. Otherwise, you're serving from an empty cup and you're giving empty information.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Understanding your own body, understanding your intuition. I think we get a lot of slack for not listening to our intuition and saying, oh, you should be very logical in your head. But it's really from the ideas. Even this program of Employed Entrepreneur came out of nowhere for me. It was like somebody just plopped it into my head and went, this is what you should do. Okay. No rhyme or reason whatsoever. I can't go back. I can just tell you it was a really loud voice, but it was really my gut, my intuition. And I know that for a lot of the successful people, women in particular that I've met, a lot of them will say that. But I find that even men who've listened to their own gut, they know, they feel it, they hear it, they can hear it. Just this is going to be a good client, this is going to be a good
Oh, yeah.
partnership, this is not. And understanding that will propel your business faster than anything else. I completely agree with that.
Yep.
So let me just ask you, because you've had such an interesting history to where you are, what would you say is your definition of success and how has it changed? Because obviously being an intern at Disney, I can only surmise you were like, one day I'm going to be a Disney chef. And that was success. And now you chose to leave something that people would be so honored to have that title. Obviously, Chef Katrina, you still have the title and you always will. To leave that, your definition of success, what is it and how has it changed over time?
It's a great question because it has changed over time. I think when we get into the world of entrepreneurship, for me, always at the core is to serve people. I think my definition of absolute success is watching those that I've coached, mentored, and trained achieve success.
Hmm.
That for me is the most rewarding out of everything I've done. On a personal level, success started to look like first it was community. How big of a community could you get? Back in the early days of marketing, it was how many followers could you get? So that looked like success. Then that wasn't success because those weren't turning into buyers. They were just people that were just following you for the sake of following, I guess. Today, I would say on my biggest journey, success for me is it goes back to it again. I think in that journey of where you're looking to where you go, first it's people, then it's money, then it goes back to people. And I've seen this even amongst men and women. It starts with people, then you get money focused because that's where you might be missing some education around how business finances and cash flow work. So you get focused on money, and then when you take your focus off money and you say it's back about people, you get back into your success. I think ultimately success looks like who did I help today? And did I show up to make sure that my message was heard by somebody that needed to hear it today? And I think if you keep it that simple, then it's not about your ego, it's just about serving others.
Wow, that's amazing. What is one thing that you could go back and say to yourself I would have done this differently.
Dear Lord, I would never do anything differently. That is the one question. If you could change something, I'm like, are you kidding? It made me today and had me become all the ups, downs, the failed relationships, the failed businesses, the failed everything. Those failures aren't failures. They were the education and the learning experience I needed to experience as a human being. The one thing, if I look back, and actually, it's funny. If you've ever done this in high school where they tell you to write a letter to yourself,
Yeah,
your
absolutely. I
future
have
self,
two of those.
have you ever gone back and read them?
I did. I did. I read one. I found one because it was in my parents' basement and they gave me a box of my stuff.
So I would say that my past self gave my future self the best education. And just from whatever I said, at 18 years old, I wrote to myself and said, in 25 years, I wish you're going to be successful and you're going to be happy. And that was my wish from my 18-year-old self to my future self. And I
Wow.
think in that respect, when you write to your future self, you live into that.
Correct.
So I always say every year when you start your journey to your future self in the next 5 years and thank them for where you are.
Yes.
Because that's going to be the beauty. So don't look back, look at what you're going to put into your future and write to your future self, because your future self is going to look back and go, man, I needed to hear this today because I'm in like a crap place, or this was the perfect time to find this. I think it's not looking back. I think what I would recommend to every woman and every man is write to your future self. What do you want to say to yourself in 5 years? What do you want to say to yourself in 1 year? And what do you want to put into the world so that you live into that?
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's exciting you?
Right.
Yeah, that
Ugh.
you want your future self to look back and go, oh my gosh, that was such a good decision that I made to start doing the things that I'm doing now.
You know what? My biggest achievement this year was the design and the creation of that planner. And that was my first, like, real fall in love with what I'm doing in business again. Because I had something tangible to work with for myself instead of staying in the digital space. So my future self is going to say, thank you for starting that journey of creator, because I know that pathway is going to open up more doors in ways I can't even imagine yet. But that moment of taking something intangible or taking other people's planners and literally turning it into a physical product, my future self is going to be like, you remember that one idea that you had and you followed your energetic cycle and you literally created a planner in a month? You designed it and you brought it to life. That was the start of really communicating everything that your heart desires or what you want for future women and for men to understand as we continue to evolve. So that's my biggest compliment to myself. I know my future self's going to be like, dang, remember when you did that and it was still rough in the world and it wasn't pretty, but that one thought brought to life changed everything.
That I love. And it's one of the things that I want to help people when they're switching that mindset of employee and entrepreneur, because in the employee world, and we started our conversation, you live in a box. You have a job description, you're in a box. And suddenly, when you become an entrepreneur, I find that you take that box and move it into another box. It's just now your own box. You're like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. But what you just said right now was you decided that creating this planner of yours was another box in the box. And the world of entrepreneurship allows the freedom to have other projects, to have other businesses, to not have to just say, I live in one box, but I can have multiple things going on. And I think that's one of the biggest mindset. Like the moment that clicks, I think our world's actually open. So I feel like just in the way you described it, might have been that moment where your mindset just went, I could do something else too, along with doing what else I do.
And you can. I think one of the biggest things that for if you're coming from the world of business and you're stepping into the world of entrepreneurship, know that this is the journey. And the best advice I ever got, I was sitting at one of those high-end tables where all the multimillionaires are sitting at, and got invited to sit down. And there was a lady there, she said one thing, and it really resonated with me as we were building out this company that I now run, because I've done a couple before. She goes, your business will pivot 9 times before you settle on what's going to actually move you forward.
Wow.
In your journey from entrepreneur or from employee into entrepreneurship, you might start one place. I started in network marketing. I didn't even mention that.
Yes.
Started in the world of network marketing, ran into the world of business, got into the world of digital marketing, became a community manager, became the director of sales. Then I went into my own coaching. Like it's evolved as I have found what I love around each one of these businesses and the joy that it brings me. So you're not stuck. You're allowed to evolve. You're allowed to change your idea. You're allowed to pivot. And I give you permission to do that because that's the journey of every businesswoman.
Thank you. And I think for many people listening to this, they needed someone. They needed essentially a stranger. Hopefully, by the end of this, you don't feel like Chef Katrina is a stranger, but sometimes you need a stranger, a third party to give you permission to do that.
Mm.
As we end out, I have one last question as we're wrapping up. What is the importance of paying for or having a coach? So, why is paying for help, coaching, mentorship, courses? Why is that even important? I went to school. I already did schooling. I don't want to do that anymore. But why is this so critical as a business owner, as an entrepreneur?
Because what you learned in school doesn't apply to the business world as an owner. Like we talked about in the very beginning, school trains you to be an employee, but the business coaching that you're going to get from Anita, you're going to need a different business coach at different moments in your life. I remember this conversation I had with I can't remember his name. Anyways, he says every actor doesn't have one coach. Why would an Emmy award winning actor have four coaches, five coaches? One to work on speech, one to work on posture, one to work with you as a human being. The more coaches you surround yourself with, and when you pay them, you're gifting them the opportunity to contribute more to you. Free does not put people to hard work for you. I will tell you that right now. When you exchange for free, you'll do less work. Let's think of yourself as an employee. Will you work for free? No. So why would you want a business coach that's working for you for free? Because one of the things around hiring a business coach and hiring people to take care of your finances and hiring people to help you with your marketing, they're there to guide you and they're there to be your mentor in this process. They've done the work before you. They're going to shorten your learning curve, but it doesn't mean you're not going to fail. You're still going to make mistakes. That's the human piece of what you need to learn in your business. Pay for coaching. Pay $10,000, pay $20,000, pay $100,000 for coaching because a $100,000 coaching experience is going to be a very high level coaching experience. You're going to want to make those investments, invest in courses. And no matter what, go to live events. Even for me, I know I may know this information, but the thing is, there's always a new nugget of information that's going to contribute to my growth. I am always willing to spend $300, $500, $600 to go to a live event, maybe even $1,000 for the VIP, because I know one nugget in there is going to move my business forward. So it is worth it. You may outgrow your coach. It's okay. That's what naturally happens. You will go through multiple coaches. You'll start with one. I've had multiple clients that have outgrown me and looked for the next person up, the next person that's above. And I want that for them. You can't stay with me forever. That's not the goal of what I teach. I want you to outgrow me, or I want you coming to me as I grow. But the thing is that you're on a journey. Pay for coaching. Say thank you to the person that's giving you information and knowledge. Their knowledge is worth the price. Just as you pay for knowledge from an instructor for college, you're paying for the knowledge of somebody that can actually help you succeed successfully in business. It's worth the investment.
Amazing. Chef Katrina, thank you. Thank you for being transparent with your wisdom. We appreciate you so much. I am so blessed to call you a friend and to be on your podcast and you be on mine. I really appreciate you and your story, and I've learned so much from you and how to rethink about my own entrepreneurial journey. So I thank you so much about this. Please follow Katrina. Please follow her podcast as well. We're going to put all her links and details in the captions. So thank you again so much. Do you have any last closing comment you'd like to say?
No, it's been an honor to be on here on your podcast with you. And for everybody that's listening, men or women, you know what? This is their journey. And I hope that out of this podcast and everything Anita shares with you and all the others that she interviews, that one nugget sparks an idea that will transform your life. And that is, I hope, is the gift that I give to you. And I look forward to hearing from you, and definitely comment and follow. I have a good time around this.
Awesome. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for watching. Hopefully you were inspired just as I was by our amazing guest. Please subscribe because every week we will be interviewing someone else who's made that transition from employee to entrepreneur. In the comments, please share the one nugget that you heard that will change your business as well.